rejection stopped bothering me, and I would feed off of it. You know, it's like I go to every barn every day and say, can I help you with anything? Can I help you with anything? We don't need you, kid. We don't need any help. We don't need you. Stop coming by here. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. I left them with a smile. It didn't matter to me. I found by doing that, some of those people that told me no early on and kept telling me no and no, if I kept coming back there with the right attitude, showing that I wanted it more than anybody else, they ended up being some of the best clients I had in my career.
Just a little while ago in one of the masterminds that I participate in, both in speaking and in the dynamic of, you know, just creating some better results, whether it's in leadership, whether it's in sales. I think that you can always create new opportunities. And so having, you know, the blessing of getting to know Aaron in a short period of time has been pretty exceptional. I've posted a lot in regards to Aaron's story as far as being a world champion, winning 4,000 races in his career, arguably one of the best jockeys of his era. We had a lot of conversation in regards to how is this going to benefit real estate professionals. And as I've gotten to know Aaron a little bit better, I've certainly learned just the dynamic of, you know, perseverance and ability to achieve true excellence, and ultimately a lot that transfers directly into our environment, which is the real estate environment. So Aaron, welcome to our mastermind.
Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. First rule is never be late. And I just was at another meeting 40 miles away, and then I got in my car and there was an accident, and it said I was going to get back to my apartment at 12:59. So I literally ran up 8 flights of stairs because I didn't have time to wait for the elevator. So sorry, I was a couple minutes late.
It's all good. Aaron just made a major life change and a major move from LA to Miami, basically, from what you told me.
Yes, so I've been a jockey for 34 years and just recently retired. December 26th, I rode my last race in Saudi Arabia. And I had announced my retirement in November. And then 2 days later, a prince had called asking me to come out to Saudi Arabia and ride for him for a month. And it gave me the opportunity to go visit my son over in Dubai, who's in the Marines. So it's been, a lot has happened in the last month and a half since I retired. I uprooted, moved from Southern California, now moving into Miami area and going into the corporate world with racing, on the corporate side of racing with a company that owns several tracks throughout the country. So it's big changes for me, but I'm up for the challenge and excited about it.
Awesome. Aaron, oftentimes I pose a question in terms of, you know, how a highly successful realtor got started, but maybe today you can take us through how did you get in, you know, started into the world of racing, a little bit more about, you know, your background for those that may not know you, and just a little bit about your story.
So a lot of jockeys would start because somebody in their family was into racing. Maybe it was a jockey, maybe it was a horse trainer. They grew up around it. I was around it in a different way. My grandparents were gamblers. They loved going to the racetrack in Southern California, Santa Anita in the daytime, and another track that had quarter horses at night called Los Alamitos. And as a child, I wanted to be nowhere else but with my grandparents when they'd go to the races. And so at 4 years old, I said I would be a jockey. I was terrified of horses, didn't know if I'd be the right size, but I didn't care. I had a dream, and that was what I was going to do. And never in my life did I want to be a fireman or a policeman. And the things that go through a child, you know, different as they grow older, they change their mind on what they want to do. And even though I had that fear, nothing ever changed in my mind of what I was going to become and what I was going to do for a living. So I never got on horses until I was 13 years old. I had met a retired jockey when I was 12, and he told me if I wanted to learn how to ride and take care of horses, I could move to his farm the next summer. And he said he would teach me how to take care of them and introduce me to getting in the saddle and riding and see how I felt about it. So I went down there the next summer. I was 13 years old, and I spent the summer there, had a blast, and still had never been on a horse, still had a fear of them. But I was getting a little bit more comfortable being on the ground with them. And then one day the gentleman that taught me to ride, Rudy, he said, go grab a saddle and put it on that horse. And as scared as I was shaking and put the saddle on the horse. And for about 20 minutes, he had me on a long lunge line. So he had a rope in his hand so the horse couldn't get away. And he had him jogging around and galloping in circles and turned around going the other way. And multiple times I almost fell off. But when I got off, I was so excited and shaking. My knees were weak. And he told me, he said, kid, you're a natural. And I didn't know what he saw in me. I was just, to me, it was fear of falling that kept me on. And it was then that I realized, fear could, if I faced my fears, I could go on and do great things. And so at the end of that summer, I was supposed to go back up. My parents lived 8 hours north of the farm. And I was supposed to go back up and back to school. And I called and asked my parents if it was okay if I didn't go home. So I virtually left home when I was 13 years old. I dropped out of school in the 9th grade and just focused 100% on becoming a jockey. From that time I got on that first horse, I lost the fear of it. I found the passion that I always had behind it. Now I've started surrounding it with the confidence every time I got on horses. And I stayed there for 3 years learning how to ride. When I ventured out to start racing, Rudy said, look, I don't want to throw you right in the middle of everything at once. He said, I want you to begin someplace where you can make mistakes, you can overcome them, you can learn from them. And so I went to Tijuana, Mexico. So at 16 years old, I lived there by myself for 3 months. I lived in a hotel that cost $11 a day. It certainly wasn't the Ritz-Carlton, but it was quite a life experience for me as a young kid to be in a hotel by myself, be living by myself, but be responsible enough to have a real job as far as being a professional athlete at 16 years old. So that's where it all began. At that point, I would have signed a contract to ride in Tijuana, Mexico. I didn't know anything about money. I didn't know anything about traveling. I didn't know anything about where racing could take me. I was just excited because my dream as a kid was to just be a jockey. And now I was doing it. So, I eventually, as things went on, I kept raising my standards. And 3 months after I was there in Tijuana, I came to one of the toughest racing circuits in the world, which was Southern California, Santa Anita Racetrack. From there, I started my career on, and again, I rode for 34 years, and in the middle of it, I've ridden everywhere here in the U.S., but I've ridden in many countries. I've won races and major races in 7 different countries. I've ridden, I'm very close with the ruler of Dubai. I not only ride for him, but I'm a friend of his. I've ridden for the Queen of England, flown over there for her and ridden for her, and been fortunate enough to have lunch with her a few times and do things that I really shouldn't, people look at me and why am I qualified to do that? I'm qualified because I happen to do something that they're fascinated with. They call it the sport of kings, and many princes and kings and queens, that's where it all began hundreds of years ago, and they're still fascinated by it. So it's taken me on a crazy tour of everything. But as I retire, everybody celebrates what I've accomplished in my business. But you look back on all the things, and the most things I'm proud of is the times that I stumbled and was able to overcome them. So that's my career in a real quick run through it. But
Sure.
If you have anything you want to ask me, Ryan, or
I definitely do. I think that when we look at that, obviously, that story is just amazing in terms of just a true legacy inside of your craft. My question is, and I think it relates to, real estate in a way. When did you get your first win? What did it take for you to get your first win? I mean, you've told me 4,000 wins and a whole bunch more losses, but what was it that, started to catapult you? Because in our business, anybody can go and sell real estate. And we've got the law of averages where across North America, average agent sells less than 5 homes a year. You get somebody that's doing a lot more, there's something different. What did it take for you to, get your first win? And ultimately, how did you start building upon that?
Well, it took me about 3 weeks. It was my 18th race that I rode, was my first winner. And for me, the first race was the exciting of race that I ever had in my career, because I was last, and I'm in the only industry where an ambulance actually follows you. And, I was 20 lengths behind the field, but I remember, laughing because I pulled up and the ambulance driver said I was getting ready to honk at you because you were going so slow. But to me, it was exciting because I had accomplished my goal. It was, it's finally a licensed jockey. But on the second week I rode, my agent had told me, go see this trainer and try and get on this horse. Go ask him for a mount on this horse. So I had asked him, horse's name was Raging Henry, and I said, is there any way I could ride Raging Henry? And he said, kid, you just started out. I don't know if you can ride that well, or, I'd have to see some other progress, and maybe some other people can put you on some horses. And I said, okay, sir. And, I left his barn, and then I went back again later and I said, do you have anything else I can ride? And he said, well, I'll put you on this filly next week. He said, if you ride her well, maybe I'll put you on Raging Henry the following week. Well, I ended up going and riding that filly, and she ran a really good second. And so he said, okay, I'll put you on Raging Henry. And so then that was my first winner. But it came from the first time I got turned into becoming my first winner by me going back there and saying, well, is there something else I can do for you? Is there a lesser horse maybe I can ride? Is there, maybe I'm not going to sell your mansion today, but is there any other places you have that maybe I can rent to somebody? Or is there any other listings you might be interested in? So to me, it was about going back, and that's where I started learning about, that was my first no of my career. And I've had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times I've been turned down, and so that was where things really started to change. And from that point on, it was amazing how I think I stood out in Tijuana because I was a young white kid. I weighed 87 pounds when I was 16 years old, didn't speak any Spanish. And so I just definitely stood out when I was running around the barn area, and people were giving me good opportunities from my first winter on. And I started winning 2 and 3 races a day. And all of a sudden, people in Southern California started hearing about this kid that could ride. So, every win puts you in a better spot, no matter what business you're in. And so that's where things really started snowballing for me. And, in real estate, sure, anybody can sell, a home when the market's good, or maybe for the right price we can do it. But why is it that some people are so successful and seem like they can do it in any market? And it's not always that they're doing certain things. It's the way they're doing, the things in a certain way. The market's the same for everybody. But one realtor can do it different than another person, or another jockey. There's many times I've seen guys ride a horse, and, in the eye of many people, they didn't do anything wrong. But I might have seen something and tell a trainer, give me an opportunity on that horse. I saw something during the race that I think I can do a little bit different. It's the same style race. It's the same everything. We get in the starting gate, and we all leave there at the same time. But I found different things from time to time that I might be able to do a little bit better to help that horse get to the finish line. And, there's sometimes that I probably don't get the most out of a horse, and another rider did better when I got off of it. So it's always about finding your way, and then don't get stuck in one way. It's always about, I heard you say the other day on a call, Ryan, that we, sometimes put on your focus and the blinders. Well, in racing, they actually put a hood on a horse, and it's called blinkers, and they'll have cups on the side. And sometimes they're full cups where they can only see forward. It is there for them to make focus. But I always tell the trainers that I ride for, I don't want them completely closed up. I like a hole drilled in the side of them so they can not necessarily see everything around them, but they can see their competition when it's starting to come up. So they still focus forwardly 90% of their focus is. But if something around them is coming, somebody's making an early move, somebody's changing their strategy, my horse feels it and responds to it before they get by him. And I think that's that way in life is, it's good to stay focused and keep your focus totally forward, but don't ignore what everybody else is doing, because somebody else might have an idea that's going to catapult them up. If you're paying attention to what's in front of you, but also be aware of what's around you, as you see them advancing, you might be able to pick up on it and get momentum before they pass you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things in our industry is, especially when we're building, when we're first out of the gates, or we're trying to go to another level, there's a process of building, not just momentum, but, really starting to create, a system or things like that. What often gets in the way is fear. And I would think that, there's a lot of fear that can be involved in horse racing. So maybe you can talk to the dynamic of fear. I mean, you're in a sport that, like you just said, ambulances are chasing you around the track. It's pretty dangerous. There's a much higher level of fear. In our business, one of the greatest fears is fear of rejection or fear of failure, things like that. Maybe you can talk to the feared factor, I would say.
Well, we're in a business that we average 2 deaths a year with jockeys in North America. A friend of mine was just paralyzed 2 months ago. He's 27 years old. It's common to have, 2 to 5 of us at least have some partial paralysis. And a lot of times it's not necessarily when I fall off that bothers me. Sometimes you think, okay, I hit the ground, it hurts. You might break a bone or two, but you got to remember there might be 7 to 11 horses behind you. And a lot of times those horses don't miss you. Sometimes they jump you. Sometimes sometimes the worst spills you come out of fine, and then the spills that don't look so bad, you get the worst injuries. But my fear was never about being hurt. I didn't, that never crossed my mind. I've always known it's there. I know it's possible, but I was never afraid once I started racing of what could happen to me. I was also afraid of the same things that you were afraid of. I mean, rejection's not something that makes you feel good, and I learned quick in this business to have thick skin, to be resilient, to, be able to feed off everybody that told me no, every fan that told me I suck, every owner that got mad at me. And I'm literally in a business where I get fired almost every day I go to work. Because if I'm riding 5, 6, 7 races and I, lose on a couple of them, that owner of that horse or each horse, they're not going to blame their horse not being fast enough. It's like their child. They think they're the perfect child. They do everything right. So they don't want to accept that they just aren't fast enough. Well, I become the first excuse because the trainer doesn't want to be the excuse and get fired. So he says, yeah, the jockey will change the jockeys next time out. So I'm in a business where I know going to work, I'm probably getting fired today, but I love going to work every day because it doesn't faze me anymore. It was, I dare you to fire me. I'll find something better. And I would prove it over and over, and rejection stopped bothering me. I would feed off of it. It's like I go to every barn every day and say, can I help you with anything? Can I help you with anything? We don't need you, kid. We don't need any help. We don't need you. Stop coming by here. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. I left them with a smile. It didn't matter to me. You can tell me no. You can tell me no. And, you can be a pit bull, but have a smile on your face. You don't always have to be aggravating and biting on an owner's leg that's trying to sell a home, or they don't want to deal with you. Always with a smile and, all right, have a great day. I'll see you down the road. Thank you. And I would check with them again tomorrow. So I found by doing that, some of those people that told me no early on and kept telling me no and no, if I kept coming back there with the right attitude, showing that I wanted it more than anybody else, they ended up being some of the best clients I had in my career. So it began as fear of failure. Never was fear of falling, but it was fear of failure and falling mentally and falling where I wasn't in the standings because I wasn't giving enough. So, I think through a lot of that losing, I became the person I was and said, I'm going to fight for whatever it takes. I'll lose as many times as it takes until I win.
We talked a lot about building, your business, which it is. It's a business and it's a career. And we talked about the difference between the building phase versus when it gets a little bit easier. And, the drastic difference, because, we can have one win and think that we've arrived. I don't think we ever really arrive anywhere, but, what's the building phase like in your industry? Because I think it would probably apply very similarly to ours.
Well, my building phase started in December 27th in 1986, and it just stopped December 26th in 2020. Mm-hmm. Like there was never a day that I didn't think I had to build and I had to do better. I had to find better ways, find creative ways to be better than them on the track, but also as a salesperson to get on the right horses. And, so I had a great run in the mid 90s to, early 2000s. I was, always in the top of the standings in the country. I was traveling all around the world, and it was I was sought after to, there were times I'd ride in California on a Friday. I'd ride in New York on a Saturday, and I might ride in, England on Sunday, or with the time change, if it would allow me to. Yeah. I mean, there were crazy things, and you literally sleep on a plane 3 nights in a row, but you were going to ride the greatest of races for, the biggest purses. So it was like, you got the opportunity to sell a mansion every day of the weekend. And so to me, it was always building and building. But, when I retired, everybody looks at all the things that I did, but man, there were times that I was on the very top, and then it just crashed the next year. It could have been because I had an injury and I was out 2 or 3 weeks. And then when I came back, I got off to a slow start. So I didn't have that same business. It could have been for many different reasons, but there wasn't just build, climb. There were peaks and valleys. And when I'd fall far, and I broke 32 bones in my career, but it wasn't the broken bones that a lot of times kept me from doing good. It was just other guys would come in and I would have to readjust. How am I going to get in that barn? The new barn would be supporting somebody else where they used to support me. How can I either get back in that barn or find a barn that wins more than them? And, it was always about adjusting. So the building stage never stopped for me. And I think when you get complacent and think you're the best, that's when somebody's going to pass you up and you're going to wonder what happened. And I remember I had an agent when I was probably 20. So I'd been riding for about 4 years. And I used to record all my races when I'd get home. They'd have a replay show, and I was winning a lot back then. And so I'd record all my winners. I thought one day that's going to be so cool to go back and have those on tape and watch all my wins. And, a couple of years went by and my agent said, "You still record all those races?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "What are you learning from?" And I said, "Oh, it's fun just to go back and watch." He said, I asked you, what are you learning from? And I really didn't have an answer. And he said, "You're recording the wrong races." He said, "What are you going to improve on when all you're watching is the victories? You already got the ultimate result you were after. So why'd you record those?" He said, "Why don't you quit recording the wins and record the losses and find out what you could have done different, where you could have positioned yourself early on in the race. You might not have won, but you could have advanced and gotten a better result than you did. How can you do things different?" And he said, "Quit recording your wins and start looking at your losses." And I swear by doing that, I learned so much more about myself and became such a better rider by doing that, looking at my mistakes, looking at my losses, my faults. How can I become better? And it helped me become not only better for myself, but better than other riders around me, because they weren't necessarily looking at their mistakes. So not only would I look at my mistakes, I'd look at theirs. How can I improve off that? What can I do different? And I would handicap each rider and know their tendencies. I would know certain riders didn't like being on the inside. They would rather swing wide. So if I could sit right behind him, I know he's going to swing wide, and that opens it up for me. Or certain people's tendencies, and I think that's probably true in every business. You start knowing your competition, what they're going to do, what kind of moves they're going to make, and that's when I really learned how to be great. And it's like I started finding greatness in other people and being able to respect that and learn from that. And that's when I found the greatness in myself, because I was learning from my mistakes, learning from mentors and watching them, and stopped watching me succeed, but learning from my failures and watching others succeed.
That's a very humble approach to growth. How do you handle pressure? Because I would think that you have been in some of the biggest pressure cookers in the world in different situations, races, that mindset to go into that. How do you navigate and handle that? I mean, we might go into a multiple offer situation, or, we're competing for a listing. You're, racing in the largest in the largest race in the world. How do you handle that kind of pressure when you're in that situation?
I never feel pressure when I'm actually in a race. I feel pressure to get on the right horses. I feel pressure to get myself in the right position so that I can win those Kentucky Derbies or, whatever race it may be. And I did win the biggest race in the world in 2009. It was in Dubai, and I felt no pressure at all. I remember somebody interviewing me before the race, a few hours before the race, and they came, one of the TV networks, and they came and said, "How do you feel about your horse?" He was a long shot at the time, and I was extremely confident. I basically told him how I saw the race develop in my mind. I'd run it through thousands of times, and I will say very, very seldom does a race happen the way you think it's going to happen. Horses can stumble, they don't jump out of the starting gate well, you get pinched back and you're not in the position you wanted to be. But that day I just felt so confident. I was so relaxed all day. Matter of fact, before the races that day, I took my brother to Dubai with me for the experience, and I was there for 10 days. And he called me that morning and he said, what are you doing? It was about 11 o'clock. I said, I just finished brunch. And he said, what are you going to do till the races? And I had to be at the track at 3 o'clock that afternoon. And he said, what are you going to do until then? You've got to be nervous. I said, no, I'm not. I feel really good. He said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'm going to go over to the water park. So I went over to, it's a great water park in Dubai. So I went on the water slides from 11:30 in the afternoon or morning until about 2 o'clock. Then I went home and, took a shower and put my suit on, and then I went to work. I felt no pressure. So the pressure was behind me. When I got on the big stage, I felt like I was already where I needed to be. It was game time and I would always focus. It was the pressure building up to how do I get to that stage that I put on myself. Once I got there, I was always comfortable. So I think when you get to a certain level of, okay, whether it's the process of how do I get that listing, once you get that listing, sure, there's always pressure to sell that before another realtor comes in and might sell it from underneath you. But once you get that, you're at a different level than you were before. And I'm certainly, when I'm riding the biggest races in the world, I'm at a different level than anybody ever expected me to be at. They always told me you'll never make it. You're afraid of horses. You're going to be too big. What do you have that anybody else doesn't have that makes you feel good? And when I started doing and being successful, I never felt the pressure once I got in the saddle.
To me, it sounds like more of the preparation. It's almost when you look at a professional boxer or like a professional fighter, they train for ultimately, let's say 16 weeks of hardcore, 8-10 hour a day training for, a fight that's going to last 2 minutes, 5 minutes, who knows? And so it's the preparation leading up to it that puts more of the pressure on.
Yeah, a race might last anywhere from a minute and 10 seconds to 2 minutes. The Kentucky Derby runs in about 2 minutes and 2 seconds. So it's not that long you're out there, but it's months and months and months of preparation, fitness, doing different things for that moment. And you're right about boxers. I mean, talk about a tough mindset. You're going in there prepping for 3 months. And I used to work out with Oscar De La Hoya. He lived by me, and, I had the pleasure of going in the gym with him a lot of times, and, actually in the ring a couple of times where he wanted to work on his defense. So it was kind of cool because he said, I can't throw any punches. I just have to block yours. So I felt very comfortable doing that because he couldn't swing back. But I watched him and I said, how do you do this? Not only do you, prep for months before you go in the ring, you're going into a business where you're going home beat up. It's like you're getting hit and you're taking those punches. How do you overcome that? And he just said, it's all about what you put into it. And he just focused. He said, I want to feel that first hit. I hope it comes early, because if they can hit me that first time and I can take that, in his mind, he said, they can't take me down from here. They already gave me their best shot. And so it's neat to see different people, how they go about things. And, I can relate to a lot of athletes doing it. And now I'm just not going into business. So I'm sure I could learn a lot of things from all of you, how you do it in business.
When you look at where you find inspiration and I guess motivation, is that, usually from other athletes, or what do you do to, what does a world-class athlete do to get inspired and motivated?
It's funny. I look at a lot of great athletes that inspire me, but my dad died when I was 17 years old, and he was leaving for a couple of days and loved coming to the races all the time. Gave me a hug. He said, I love you, son. I'll go win a race for me tomorrow. I'll see you on, Thursday. I said, okay, Dad. And that was the end of it. I didn't think anything of it. And that night the police woke me up and they told me that my father had had a heart attack and went off the side of a mountain. He was 42 years old and I was 17. And I remember telling my mom that night that I would take on Dad's responsibilities. I'll support her and my older brother. And I said, everything will be fine. I promise you. And so to this day, I still find inspiration from what I learned from my dad those 17 years that he was around, and taking on that responsibility was probably the biggest choice I ever made in my life. Being 17 and saying, you're no longer a kid. I was that morning, but that night I wasn't. I became a son, a husband, and a brother that was going to take care of him as well. So everything at that point, the pressure that I took on then set me up for everything that I could do in the future. But he gave me so much inspiration. And it's funny that I go into things even today and I'll be like, what would Dad do? How would he approach it? So you find your inspiration from different people. And, you know, I think you can find it in your own industry, but I think you find it outside in everyday life as well. You know, it's like, I've never thought I was better than anybody else. You know, maybe I thought I was better on horseback, but I never felt that I was a better person. And the one thing that I thought made me who I was as a rider and as good as my success was I wanted everybody around me to do well. And I remember some jockeys always telling me, why do you always help that young kid? Like, he's going to be better than you one day. If you teach him this, it's going to cost you wins. And I looked at it totally different. I wanted everybody around me to be great. First of all, it's less dangerous if everybody around me is great. But if I make them as good as they can possibly be, I've got to step up my game. And it forced me to always be better and better and better. Because if I would just get lucky and say this is as good as I need to be, I never would have accomplished the things I would have done, traveled around the world. But I wanted everybody around me to be great. And I still do that to the day I retire, is, you know, helping young kids like find their way to be great. And because a lot of them, I'm in the only sport where there's no coaches. Once you get to your jockey's license, you're only as good as you become by learning from everybody else, by asking questions. And, you know, if you think you know it all, you're going to last in the business for a couple of years. So, you know, I say surround yourself by great people. You can learn from all of them. I don't care if they're your competition or not, root for them, want them to be great, because you'll have to step up. You know, it's like, there's a reason that some guys do excel, and it doesn't matter where you put them. Didn't matter if I went to New York, Kentucky, Chicago, wherever it might have been. Over time, I would rise to the top. But, you know, I get beat many times. And, you know, I've told you about wins and losses. You know, we can't get caught up and just not focus on what got you there and the people around you. A lot of times, even though they're competition, they're the ones that make you rise.
Mm-hmm. When you have the level of success that you've had in real estate, and I'm sure you may see it, we were talking about a realtor that you had the other day, actually. When you look at, you know, the dynamic of real estate, it's a very recognition-based business. You know, I'm number one, or all these awards and that. And it tends to go to our heads. A lot of us realtors have healthy egos. When you hit the level of success that you did, how do you stay grounded, humble, you know, not let it get to you, or does it at times? I mean, we're all human, but I mean, that your story is just so exceptional that it's worth talking to that dynamic.
I would say I stayed reasonably humble for the success I had, but at the same time, the business would humble you. So I prepared myself for, don't get too high on your highs and don't get too low on your lows. But I just think it's very important that, you know, you just prepare yourself and prepare yourself every day to be a little bit better than you were the day before. And I know that sounds easy and everybody says it, but you can do little things. You know, it's like, I wake up with a positive mindset. I don't know what today's going to bring. I don't know if it's my last day, but I'm going to make it my best day, you know. And it's like, just keep going after things. And, you know, the prep work is so much in your mind. It's like, I can do physical things just the same as other people can do them. But when there's a setback, I'm gonna find myself 2 steps ahead of that guy, because I'll watch him quit, and that guy will quit, and that guy will quit. And it's about staying focused, and just your mindset is where I build it on. Is, you know, it's more my mindset than anything around me is what's made me strong.
Did you ever have any points where you got discouraged or that you felt like quitting?
I always got discouraged.
Yeah.
I'd get discouraged because I'd get fired. I'd say, man, in my mind, I'm like, I know I'm better than that jockey, but, you know, it's discouraging. But how am I going to find another good horse? How will I, you know, get back or show that guy that I'm better than the trainer that just fired me? How can I find a horse that can beat him? So, yeah, I was always discouraged, but it was never to the point of quitting, because I loved what I did so much. And I loved the thrill of victory so much that it was all worth all the losses and worth all the, you know, beating down and everything else. And to me, you know, you couldn't discourage me enough to quit. If anything, you'd set me back, and sure, you know, you'd have bad days and just think, man, this is tough. But I'd get back up and I would go after it. You know, it's like, it wasn't always easy. I had a lot of years where I struggled, no matter how much success I had in the past, or, you know, it wasn't always easy. And some, you know, I found some of my greatest successes when I was in the deepest trenches, when I thought, or when other people said, he's done, I was hardly riding. That's when I found some of my biggest successes, because in my mind, I would still go out there and brush it off and say, I don't care. If they don't want to ride me today, I'll find somebody who wants to ride me tomorrow. And just kept going and going and going until I would find success.
We're in a mastermind together where it's, very mindset based in terms of, the results that we can all create. If you were looking at somebody that was struggling and wanted to shift their mindset or, create some momentum, where do they need to go first to have success?
I would say in the bathroom and look in the mirror. It's like, because when we have the success, I don't care if you're a jockey, if you're a realtor, if you're a garbage man, whatever it might be, when things are going well, we have a tendency to pound ourselves on the chest. And, we walk through our victories because that's the way it's supposed to be. We were supposed to succeed. But then when we start to fail and we get discouraged, we, blame circumstances. We blame somebody else. Oh, I didn't get that opportunity. He always gets the best listings. Why is that? It's inside of us that we have to find, the courage to say, okay, how can I do this different? Let me take a step back. Let me look at other people. Let me ask questions to the people around me succeeding. Instead of just looking at them as competition, hey, I know you've got tons of listings. What is it you're doing different? I mean, not one person can handle everything. So why not ask them? Let them share some advice or different things that can help. So it's always about getting knocked back and rebuilding and coming back stronger than you were before. And, I told you that when I was down and out, I wasn't doing any good. I was, this was in 2009, and a lot of people thought I would retire then. My business was really slow. I was going through a divorce. It was my lowest year I had ever had as far as mentally being present because of my divorce and everything else. But I just kept going out. When I get to the track, it was my comfort zone, and I kept going out asking to get on good horses. And even my agent was telling me, man, don't waste your time at the big barns. They're not going to ride you. You got to ride for the little guys that don't win as much. And I'm like, that's not what I'm looking for. Those guys that you're telling me to go ride for don't win. I work so I can win. And I just kept going and asking. And one day I just grabbed a cup of coffee and was standing next to a guy that I never rode for. And he didn't even win that much. But I just happened to be standing next to him. And in racing, they always have a stopwatch and they're clocking the horses, how fast they're going. And I was watching him as a horse went by and he stopped the stopwatch. He was like, damn it. And I said, what's the matter? And he said, they never get it right. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, this horse has been off for a year and a half with an injury. And, they always go too fast. He's not ready to go fast yet. And I said, why don't you let me get on him? I didn't know who the horse was. It didn't matter to me. But if the problem with him is that he goes too fast, I need a horse like that, a horse that can go fast. And I said, why don't you let me get on him next week? And if I go, if I'm not within 3/5 of a second when you're clocking him, I'll never ask you again. Now, that's a pretty bold statement. I have to go 5/8 of a mile, which is going to be somewhere around a minute and 1/5, or a minute and 1 second, or 59 seconds, somewhere in there. But I'm telling him I'll be within 3/5 of a second or I'll never ask to get on him again. So he told me no. And I said, what do you have to lose? You said everybody that gets on him does it wrong. So let me try. So every day I went back to him asking until that next week. He said, all right, get on him. So I got on him. I was 2/5 of a second off. And then the next week I was within 3/5 of a second. And then every week I just kept doing it right. Well, it turned out he ended up being one of the best horses in the country that year. The following year, he got invited over to Dubai to run in the biggest race in the world. And not only did he compete in it, he dominated and he won by 14 lengths. So by me having absolutely no business, by not listening to my agent, by not listening to any other client that was telling me you're not good enough, or jockey said, why are you wasting your time? When are you going to quit? I kept going out there and I said, I'm going to shoot high. I'm not going to listen to them. I know there's something out there for me. And I went to a guy that was just at the right place at the right time, which is where you could find a listing, where you could find a horse, where you could find anything. And I ended up getting on a horse that even he didn't know he was a good horse. And he ends up being the best horse in the world that year. So, it's about never giving up on yourself more than anything. People are going to give up on you and all the time. But when I look in the mirror, it's like, I know who I have to answer to every night. I know who, when I get up in the morning, who I have to look at and say, today's going to be your day. And it's usually me in the mirror.
That's so awesome. So awesome. That's the exact perspective that we all, would certainly benefit from. Just out of curiosity, and I've posted a couple of the videos of your races. One was, the big come from behind, and the other was the dominant race. Which do you prefer, or do you have a favorite?
They're both great. The one that was on the lead was the one I just spoke about, the Dubai World Cup 2009. That was great because it was a great story for me of like, here's a guy that had great success early on. I was doing the worst I've ever done. And now I'm winning on the biggest stage in the world against the best in the world. So to me, it's hard to say what's better than that. But the experience I got from riding Kaleidoscopio in New York was an awesome experience because he was a 10-year-old horse. And again, when I got on him, it was another year I wasn't doing great. It was 2012 when I first got on him. Horse came over from Argentina, and he was coming to run in a big races called the Breeders' Cup. And there were two guys that were there, didn't speak English, and I don't speak anything but English. But I knew they brought in two horses that were thought of to be eligible for these big races. So I thought, I'm going to go over there every day and talk to them. My agent said, you're wasting your time. They don't speak English. I don't care. I went every day. How are you? With a smile, how are you? And that's all I knew. I'd go by every day. They would say hello, they'd wave, they'd smile. And that's something that connects with everybody. You can make eye contact with somebody, or you can turn your head away or just pass by people. And, you don't know who you're passing. And by doing that every day, finally, when they started getting comfortable and waving to me, I told some of the other grooms that were there that speak Spanish, I said, can you translate for me? And so they started translating back and forth for me. So we got into conversations. I told them I'd love to ride their horse. And over a couple weeks' time, I got to be friendly with them. And I ended up getting the mount on that horse. And I ended up winning the Breeders' Cup, which is a huge thing in our industry. And then the race that you posted was his final race as a 10-year-old. And that race was, on national television on NBC. And most people didn't give him much chance. And to me, he was so fun to ride because I had so much confidence in him. And I felt that he understood me and I understood him. And the things that, what I've learned as a jockey is about listening, about understanding, about putting others first before myself. And people are like, how do you do that? You're riding a horse. But honestly, they've taught me how to listen in relationships and do different things. Because when I ride a horse like Kaleidoscopio, he was an older horse. They're not usually at 10 years old, they're not winning at that level. And he knew what he wanted. When he would go out on the track, a lot of times he would refuse to even jog or gallop. And, with me, I would just let him stand there as long as he wanted. And then when he took that first step, I'm like, okay, now he wants to do it. And it was the same in the races. You saw him drop back 30 lengths. But to me, it was like, I'm not pushing. I'm going to let him place himself wherever he wants. I would listen to what he wants, allow him to get in his stride. Then once he got comfortable, then I knew he was more likely to do things for me. When I would ask him to run, he'd say, okay, you gave me my chance to get comfortable. Now I'll respond to you. And I just think that, I've learned life lessons because of that, because I do that with my children. I do that with everything in my life. I'm like, because of the horses and what I've learned from them, it's like, okay, I might think I know the answer, but let me just wait and listen to what they have to say to me, what the horse has to say to me, or what the people I'm dealing with have to say. Let me listen to their perspective. And instead of interrupting, let them say it. And then I can approach it differently and say, oh, that's interesting. But on top of that, what do you think about this? And yeah, that works well. And then all of a sudden you're working together, and then your momentum never stopped because you allowed them to carry you for the first quarter of a mile. And from that point to the half mile pole, you guys ran together, and now you've got momentum. And now you've got a team that's going together. And to me, the coolest thing about racing was becoming one with the horse. And even jockeys that I ride with, they're like, what are you talking about? We ride a horse. I'm like, you might ride a horse and that's why you do okay. I always felt I did my best when I became one with the horse. That same rhythm, find my rhythm to match their rhythm. Don't try and make them match what I want them to do. Let them find their stride. Then I can put myself in that same stride, find that rhythm, build on it together. And then we can both accomplish what we set out to do and win and be first at the finish line.
Very applicable to when it comes to working with a client as well.
I'm sure. Yeah.
A transfer there too. One of the things that a lot of agents and real estate professionals really want to break into is the luxury market. You know, we have our average sale prices, we have our fixer-uppers. The luxury market is kind of one of those ones that's a tough one to crack at times. And, you know, I constantly hear a lot of the time, they're just not in my circle, or, you know, I don't associate with that market. And I think that sometimes they limit. I never dealt with the luxury market on a high level myself. From what we've talked to, and you've been around celebrities, you know, other professional athletes, you know, a lot of people that are in, you know, that kind of a circle. How do you connect and engage with people that aren't necessarily always in the same circle as you're typically accustomed to? I mean, having lunch with the Queen would be an extreme example, but, you know, there's got to be other stories here.
Again, I always, you know, again, it's a mindset, because to me, you know, in our business too, there's jockeys that are in the upper echelon. They're going to ride the Kentucky Derbies every year and travel around the world every year. But there's guys that are cheaper races, are called claiming races. And it doesn't mean that the horses aren't good. That's just a level where they belong. You know, they don't win the big prize money races. You don't travel around the world to ride those kind of horses. And there's guys that stay in that level all the time. Some of it is because of their ability, but a lot of it's because of their mindset. And I hear the same thing. It's like, yeah, I'm not that kind of rider, or those aren't my kind of clients. Well, what makes that guy my client? The only difference was I made him my client because I didn't sit back here and say, that's not my circle. I would go in there every day, even when my agents would tell me, look, that guy's not going to ride you. Don't worry about him. Well, I'm going to go there every day, every day, every day. One day, the guy that does ride for him doesn't show, gets hurt, whatever it might be. They're mad at him for a reason. They're like, okay, kid, now it's your turn to shine. So in my mind, I don't care who I see. I'm willing to talk to anybody at any point. And it's funny because everybody thinks I'm so social, and the racetrack's hiring me to be like their ambassador and go talk to their VIP customers, celebrities, whoever it might be. But when I'm not around all that, probably, my friends say I'm the most social loner they've ever seen. I could sit alone for days. During COVID, I didn't mind. Whatever it is, I'm okay with myself. But when I'm in that area, I know what I need to do, and I'm very comfortable because in my mindset, I belong there. I belong in the Kentucky Derby. I belong talking to that person. I belong where I'm going, where my dreams are going to take me. Mm-hmm. There are no barriers. And sure, there's hurdles. I see it all the time. There's roadblocks, but it doesn't mean I can't get around them or can't jump over them if I'm running fast enough and get enough height. I mean, get that momentum. And, you know, I know it's all cliches. We all limit ourselves, but truthfully, I find that in my industry as well as any others, there's so many guys that I look at, and, you know, people say, who's the best jockey here? And to me, sometimes they're the guy that's eighth in the standings. And they'll say, well, that guy's no good. Yeah, you don't think he's good. But what I see when I'm riding the moves he's making and things he's doing, he's got more talent than the guy that's a leading rider. But the problem is he limits himself, and he believes that's his limit. He's happy that he's in the top 10, whether it's 8th, 9th, 10th. That's perfect for him because mentally he settles for it. So I think it's just about putting yourself out there. And, you know, it doesn't matter if they have, you know, money, if they have royalty, if they have star celebrity status. To me, we all do the same thing. We're all going to eat dinner tonight. We're all going to wake up in a good mood or a bad mood one day. We're all going to go to the bathroom. We're all going to take showers. We all do the same thing, and we all, you know, have the same things that are available to us if we go after them. So I just look at it as they're just like me. And so, you know, there are no limits. And it's over time and time and time of getting shot down that I put myself in those positions, because it only takes one time to win that gets you in the spot that you need to be for the rest of your life.
I have a coaching client. She runs one of the largest teams in the country, and they'll sell about 500 homes this year. Nice. She said when she started, she literally would drive up and down the street and visualize, all the for sale signs that were on the street that they were hers. And within a year or two, every single for sale sign was hers. You mentioned that you didn't necessarily, you visualize the race in your mind over and over and over again, even though the race might not go as you predicted or seldom did. But when you examine, would you visualize yourself or find that feeling of yourself winning prior to the race? It's kind of, law of attraction based, mindset based.
Many times I did. I found myself doing that more in the bigger races where other people might feel there's pressure. I would visualize myself winning on everyday races too, but there was a lot more hype and build up to the Kentucky Derbies or different races. So I would definitely envision myself winning, but even sometimes I wouldn't even see the finish of a race, but I always had a plan. Like I would handicap how I felt the race might develop, where my horse may be positioned, where I think the other jockeys will position their horses, when I think I'm going to make my move. And like I said, most of the time things change because horse will stumble out of the starting gate or wasn't focused and doesn't jump out of there well enough, or you get pinched back and all of a sudden instead of being on the lead, you're laying 7th and getting dirt in your face and whatever it might be. But that's when you say, some guys do it over and over and over again, and it's the worst mistake you can make. They jump out of the starting gate slow when they're supposed to be forwardly placed, and then now all of a sudden they're just going to send because they're supposed to be near the lead, and then they get to the lead, which that's great, but you wasted that energy getting there. In the last quarter of a mile, they fail and everybody passes it. Mm-hmm. And you can do that in your business too. It's like, if you didn't get off to the right start, don't try and do it all in one step. Sit there and wait. Be patient, because at the half mile pole, some of those horses start coming back to you because they wasted their energy, while you start getting more confident because your horse didn't waste any energy. And all of a sudden you start passing and passing and passing. And all of a sudden you're the head realtor winning those races. And when you get to the finish line, you're the one running the fastest. So I've always found that I've won a lot of races where things went wrong or I wasn't expected to win. The horses were long shots because I allowed them to say, you know what, it wasn't the start that I envisioned. Things didn't happen the way I wanted the first quarter of a mile, but don't chase it. Mm-hmm. Just sit here, sit there. They're going to make mistakes ahead of you. Capitalize on their mistakes. And when they start making mistakes, my horse is just getting comfortable again. Then all of a sudden, I'll get the most out of my horse. And you don't always win, but you might run 4th or 3rd or 2nd. And it's always about, okay, I'm starting to figure this out. Instead of pushing and pushing and pushing and being so aggressive, nobody wants somebody around them that's aggressive all the time with an attitude that's aggressive, that doesn't sit there and listen or give them a chance to get their feet underneath them. So it's about, just getting comfortable. Don't always try and match stride with somebody early on, because if you envision your goal and you go about it the right way, you're going to be in front of your competitors more times at the end than you need to be at the beginning.
I love that. And we had a good conversation the other day about your recent experience with the realtor that was just pressure, not listening, and you didn't end up working with them. Yeah,
I just coming here to Miami, and somebody gave him my number, told him I was coming out. I don't know who gave him my number, and that's fine. I need a realtor. I need some help. So, I gave him an opportunity, but he was just wanting to push and tell me, I'm busy here. I'm trying to get my job started. And he said, okay, I'll set up some appointments. So he sent me some listings that I liked, and I marked down, a handful of them that I'd be interested in seeing. And we went and looked at one the next morning, and then we got back in his car, and I'm expecting to go see another 5 or 6. And we sat there for 30 minutes, and he's scrolling through things, and he's calling people, asking if he can come look at listings. And, I'm frustrated. I don't have the time to sit in his car if we're just sitting in a parking lot and you're looking for listings. So I said, I thought we did all this and you organized it. And he's like, oh yeah, I've got a list at home. Let me run home and get that list, and then we'll get on the road again. I'm like, okay. So he said, come in for a second. So I went in, sat down on his couch, and he went in the back room for, 30 to 45 minutes. And I heard his printer and everything else. And he's printing off listings that I could have done off, rentrealtors.com or whatever he was printing it off. And he comes out and he's like, I got all these listings, and they weren't appointments. I don't have time. I could do that myself. Take me around, show me places. So he's like, oh, do you want this one? And he'd rip it up. And he didn't show me anything I wanted. And then the next day I went out with somebody else that had a few listings and I wanted to go see him. And, then he called me up and he said, "Oh, I see you went out with this realtor." I'm like, "Yeah, they had listings ready for me." And, he wanted to jump on me like I owed him something. If he would have showed me something that I rented or bought, I'm going to go through that person. I'm loyal like that. But if you're not bringing me around and showing me places, don't waste my time in your car or my time during the day when you've told me you've got listings and you're not going to take me around, and then call me and give me a hard time because I went with a realtor that actually did show me around and was productive. I'm not going to go back to that guy. I'm not going to refer him. If anything, if anybody asks me about him, I'm going to share that I had a poor experience with him. So yeah, it's not something you want. I said about being aggressive and being a bulldog, but he was that bulldog that grabbed on your pants and didn't take you anywhere. He just wanted to fight and fight and fight and say, "No, listen, don't go anywhere else. I'll show you. But he didn't show me. He showed me nothing but a poor preparation. He showed me poor business and definitely, poor, attitude towards being supposed to do things. So, I refuse to do business with people like that.
Yeah, I can appreciate that one for sure. Had to be tough to change careers and retire from the actual craft.
Actually, it wasn't. It was.
No? Okay.
Even my competitors kept telling me, "So, man, I feel bad for you." I'm like, "Why?" It's like I did it for 34 years. I chose to retire on my own terms. I'm completely healthy. And, I didn't, sure, there's races I wish I would have won. I never won a Kentucky Derby, but I won the biggest race in the world. I did a lot of great things. I traveled around the world. I'm happy with what I did. So to me, it was like, when I walked away, it was saying, I'm happy with my accomplishments. I don't know what's in front of me as far as, I didn't see that I was riding the same level of races that I was riding. And I thought, now's the time to do it. Walk away where I was, I was on top probably 5 years ago, but I was still doing well. Walk away where I've got my physical ability, my mental ability. I can go out and do anything I want to do. I've got the respect of others in my industry. And, now I'm going to be assistant vice president of a company that owns racetracks all around the country. So it was a great opportunity. I didn't know I was going to get that opportunity when I retired. I knew that I was going to have some opportunities because of the way I presented myself, the way I stepped away from the business. And I kind of put it out there that I wanted to take a month or two and, and just figure out what I wanted to do. But it's actually been so peaceful. I don't miss riding. I'll still go out and ride horses. I'm still going to enjoy that. And I'll be involved in the races, but no, I'm excited for my next venture. I'm scared, I'm excited, and I'm going to use all that stuff that I learned in the last one to be just as good in this corporation, in this company that, it's totally different. They're calling me yesterday, telling me they're setting up my office and what kind of furniture do I want and all this stuff. It's like, I worked in a locker room, it's like the only thing I sat in all my life was a saddle, and I only sat in that on the way to the starting gate. The rest of the time I'm standing up on a horse. So it's like, I'm not used to a desk and different things. So yeah, it's exciting for me because now it's starting over. It's the process that I did throughout my career is like, I'm going to go through that learning curve. I'm going to fail. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to build. I'm going to fall back. I'm going to get promoted. I'm going to do all kinds of great things. And, it's up to me how good I do, but I'm excited for it.